Namaste, I'm Mike Rosenkrantz, and welcome to Inspirations. Established in 1951, the International Organization of Migration, or IOM, is the leading intergovernmental organization in the field of migration and works closely with governmental, intergovernmental, and non-governmental partners. With more than 150 member states, a further 11 states holding observer status, and offices in over 100 countries, IOM is dedicated to promoting humane and orderly migration for the benefit of all. It does so by providing services and advice to governments and migrants. IOM works to help ensure the orderly and humane management of migration, to promote international cooperation on migration issues, to assist in the search for practical solutions to migration problems, and to provide humanitarian assistance to migrants in need, including refugees and internally displaced people. The IOM Constitution recognizes the link between migration and economic, social, and cultural development, as well as to the right of freedom of movement for all. IOM works in 4 broad areas of migration management: migration and development, facilitating migration, regulating migration, and forced migration. IOM activities that cut across these areas include the promotion of international migration law, policy debate and guidance, protection of migrants' rights, migration health, and the gender dimension of migration. Today, we'll be interviewing Maurizio Busatti, who is Chief of Mission of IOM in Nepal. Welcome, Maurizio.
Namaste.
Nice to see you. Namaste. Let's start off our interview by you telling me a little bit about your background, where you're from, a little bit about your family, and then how you came to be in Nepal.
Right, I'm an Italian as a birth, but I've been kind of an ultimate traveler for the last 25 years, mainly working on emergency, but also development dynamics in a number of regions and countries. So in fact, I lost very much of my background long ago, and in the last 20 years I've been working, 23 to be correct, in Africa, the Balkans. Now for the last 1 year I've been in Damak, a very, very different context from the one I come from. I was, before coming here, I was the Chief of Mission for IOM in France, a receiving country, many of them, a country made of migrants. So where about 10-12% of the population is of not so-called French origin. So it's a very, very refreshing change altogether, and a very challenging moment. I think I came right on time in Nepal to work on migration.
The International Organization of Migration, it's worldwide, and you partner with governments, you partner with NGOs as well.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about that, how actually you work and how many countries you're involved in and how you work with government?
Right. IOM is an intergovernmental body made of the membership of about 157 countries, so it's really reaching universality, I would say. His headquarters is in Geneva, and we have member states, Nepal being one of them. Nepal joined IOM in 2007, and since then, even before that, we have been having quite a large presence in Nepal. Like in other countries, we work, as you mentioned, with a number of constituencies, essentially the institutions, the national institutions, the governments, but not only, the legislative and the judiciary sometimes as well, on aspects, the various aspects related to migration, but also other important stakeholders, including, as you said, civil society organizations, NGOs, and local authorities, very important, and more also with the private sector, because migration being such a cross-cutting issue, you cannot leave anyone behind. How do we work with them? Essentially, we support. The nature of our work is really about support. Being a universal and international agency means being able to transfer and transpose and bring about practice, experience, and expertise that can be applied to the different challenges that migration actually carry and brings about to the different countries. Obviously, as you can imagine, challenges are different from Nepal and, let's say, another country in Morocco, for instance. But there are so many commonalities that an agency like IOM can capture and distill. And I think that this is actually our distinct value added, to be able to bring this experience from other regions that can be applied, obviously, with the due care of the differences and can generate innovation.
All of us have been reading a lot about migration, and issues in Qatar with Nepalis and such. But why has migration become such a big issue in the world?
Migration, as you mentioned, is a global phenomenon, and it's been there forever, I would say. Societies have actually been building through migration. My own country, Italy, has been an immigration country mainly to your country for one generation. And then all of a sudden the tables turned, and Italy became a receiving country, with now a percentage of about 7-8% of people living in Italy are not Italian as national. So you see that this is a growing phenomenon that is led by a number of important drives, as globalization, obviously, the international markets, but the refinement of technology and communication, important, the facility that people now have, obviously within certain limitation of getting on a plane, traveling, but also social networking. So a youngster in Kabul knows much more of how the society and the situation looks like in Europe or in the States than only a generation ago us knew about. So there is so much mixing up and blending up that migration is really the physical and, say, pictorial manifestation of our changing time. This is all the more true for Nepal. Nepal has also been historically been experiencing migration for centuries. Its socio-cultural fabric is forged around migration, east-west, north-south, and being in a region of so much mobility, I think has been in time, in generation, responding and adapting itself to the different needs, economic, social, cultural, political of the region. But there is, I think, a very important new fact. What happened in the last generation is epochal. Never before Nepal has going through a trend of outgoing migration that is so pronounced and so harsh and so marked. We are talking about, it's difficult even to estimate, because we have official figures, the one that the last census indicates 2.5 million, but we know that this is perhaps certainly only but one part of the whole universe of migration. We're talking a million of people, probably we're talking a large amount of Nepali, and all the more, not only the migrant, but if you think that every Nepali household has an experience of migration, direct experience of migration. This is why it's so important now, talking migration, it's so important raising migration in the public national agenda to make sure that this phenomenon that is so overwhelming, so new, is properly broached and properly managed.
Now, there's something called safe migration, and I know that you work with some NGOs that are helping with that. I mean, what does safe migration actually mean, and how does IOM work with NGOs to ensure that people are safe and that their contracts are followed through on, once they do migrate?
There are too many ways. Migration can go wrong in so many ways. A person that is desperate for living and flee a country for a better life can come across all sorts of bad surprises: exploitation, abuse, segregation, exclusion, violence of any type, essentially the violation of the most basic rights and principles. Safe migration is essentially reasserting the centrality of the person. The migrant is first and foremost a person. And in order to migrate safely, you need a number of important requisites and elements. Certainly you need resources, but you know that in today's society, the most important resources is knowledge. You need knowledge, you need informations, you need networking, you need links, you need an environment that can actually embrace and make and help you make the right choice. All this, unfortunately, is only partially present in Nepal. We come a long way, but we have certainly a long way to go. In order for migration to be a safe and dignified and a positive experience, we need to give migrants, individuals, the ability of making it an individual and determined choice, and not only the escape from misery and destitution. So we need to give migrants that, I would say, ownership of their migration process, and only that at that point we will be able to reduce the amount of insecurity and unsafety that is, I would say, so much in the order of the day that we got too often used to, and not and we are becoming complacent and not fighting hard enough to reduce.
So migration is really, it's a human rights issue as well. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Migration is a central human rights issue. You cannot, first and foremost, the way we see it, mobility, each individual, says the UN Charter, is free to move unfettered outside his community, outside his city, outside his country, obviously within the limitation of a national and international framework. States have the rights of asserting their sovereignty, so migration needs to be regulated. But to be a human right means also to assert the human right of a person to migrate is a principle, but to put it in practice, it takes so much energy and resources. What you need, again, as I mentioned, you need institutions that are actually taking care of the migrants. You need resources that are actually devoted and dedicated to prepare the migration process and project of individual. You need cooperation and dialogue between sending and receiving countries. And you need also never to forget that the migrants remain a citizen, first and foremost. So again, human rights means also citizenship rights. Nepali who leave their country are still the citizens, the children of Nepal. So they need to be re-enfranchised and feel that they actually belong to a community that is changing so fast. This is also the work that IOM is doing, and we believe too that we should actually get engaged.
Now we'll go to the field for some beneficiary interviews.
नमस्कार, मेरो नाम पूजा श्रेष्ठ हो। म चाहिँ मलेसिया बसेर आएको 1.5 वर्ष भयो र यहाँ आएको 1 महिना हुन लाग्यो र हिजोको दिनमा हामीले जति कुरा जानेका थिएनौं, बुझेका थिएनौं, यस कार्यक्रममा आएर हामीले धेरै कुरा जान्ने अवसर पाएका छौं र व्यावसायिक भनेको के हो भन्ने कुरा हामीलाई राम्रोसँग थाहा थिएन र यो विषय पनि हामीलाई राम्रोसँग जानकारी भयो र भोलिको दिनमा हामीले यो व्यावसायिक तालिम लिएर के गर्न सक्छौं भन्ने आश मैले राखेको छु।
नमस्ते, म राजु सापकोटा, मलेसिया बस्थे पहिला। अहिले हाल मेरो घर चाहिँ रनबा 12 शान्तिनगर चोक। म मलेसिया बसेर आएको तपाईको लगभग 2 वर्ष हुन थाल्यो। मलेसिया बसेर यहाँ आउनुमा फरक पाएँ मैले। त्यहाँपछि यो अहिले नयाँ व्यावसायिक तालिममा जुन मैले आएर संलग्न भएर तालिम लिइरहेको छु, तपाईको त्यस तालिमबाट मैले थुप्रै कुराहरू थाहा पाएँ। त्यो भन्दा पनि अगाडि मैले तपाईको आफ्नो व्यावसायिक रूपमा चाहिँ गाई र बस्तु पालेर बसेको थिएँ। यहाँबाट यो तालिम सिकेर गएपछि अझ धेरै ज्ञान भयो, त्यसलाई अझ निरन्तरता दिन्छु भन्ने मेरो मनमा लागेको छ। अब केही समयपछि मैले त्यसलाई निरन्तरता दिनेछु। त्यहाँमाथि हाम्रो यो व्यावसायिक तालिमले हाम्रो यहाँको जुन बेरोजगारी विदेशबाट फर्केर आएका युवा अथवा चाहिँ वृद्ध जति छन् तिनीहरूको लागि केही नौलो कुराहरू चाहिँ प्रष्ट रूपमा थाहा पाउन सजिलो भएको छ। र तपाईको अर्को कुरा के भने विदेश जानु भन्दा पनि हाम्रै नेपालमा केही गर्यो भने यहाँ केही छ भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ म यहाँहरू सबैलाई प्रश्न पार्न चाहन्छु।
नमस्कार, मेरो नाम सम्झना विश्वकर्मा हो। म रनपा 12 लौरीगोल गौतम बुद्ध टोलमा बस्छु। म पहिला साउदी 7 वर्ष बसेर आएँ, दुबई 6 महिना बसेर आएको हो। मलाई यो तालिमबाट धेरै राम्रो भइरहेको जस्तो लाग्छ। हामी पहिला मलाई केही थाहा थिएन, भनौँ यस्तो हिसाब किताब कसरी गर्ने, यो व्यवसाय गर्दा के फाइदा हुन्छ, कसरी नाफा हुन्छ, कसरी नोक्सान हुन्छ, यस्तो केही थाहा थिएन। तर आज यो तालिमबाट हामीले यसको बारेमा धेरै बुझ्यौँ। व्यवसाय कसरी गर्नुपर्छ, कुन तरिकाले गर्नुपर्छ, बजारको भाउ कसरी बुझ्नुपर्छ, व्यवसाय गर्न के विचार गर्नुपर्छ, ठाउँ कसरी हेर्नुपर्छ, यो सबै बुझ्यौँ।
हामीले सूचना केन्द्र इस्टाब्लिस गरिसकेपछि विशेष गरी रेस्क्युमा मलेसियाबाट चाहिँ विभिन्न ठगीमा परेका अथवा अप्ठ्यारोमा परेका कामदारहरूलाई चाहिँ नेपाल फर्काउनको लागि र उहाँहरूलाई घरसम्म पुग्नको लागि चाहिँ सहयोग गर्ने हिसाबले आइओएमसँग हाम्रो राम्रो कोलाबोरेसनमा कोअर्डिनेसनमा काम गरिरहेका छौँ। र हामीले चाहिँ मलाई लाग्छ धेरै 30-40 जना भन्दा बढी माइग्रेन्ट वर्करहरूलाई चाहिँ हामीले मलेसियाबाट आइओएमको सहयोगमा नेपाल फर्काउनलाई सहयोग गरिरहेछौँ। र यसरी सरसर्ती हेर्दा चाहिँ अहिले पछिल्लो समयमा रिइन्टिग्रेसनको पाटोमा पनि आइओएमले हामीलाई चाहिँ सहयोग गरिरहेको अवस्था छ। जस अहिले भर्खरै हामीले चाहिँ फाइनेन्सियल लिट्रेसी तालिम, रेमिटेन्सको कसरी सदुपयोग हुनसक्छ भनेर फाइनेन्सियल लिट्रेसी तालिम पनि सञ्चालन गरिरहेछौँ। यसरी ओभरअल हेर्दाखेरि आइओएमले जुन किसिमको हाम्रो प्रवासी नेपाली समन्वय समिति उद्देश्य छ, त्यो उद्देश्यलाई चाहिँ एउटा टेवा पुर्याउनको लागि विभिन्न माइग्रेसनको हरेक साइकलहरूमा चाहिँ सपोर्ट गर्दै आइरहेको छ।
कसरी हाम्रो वैदेशिक रोजगार सुरक्षित गर्ने भनेर चाहिँ यसमा सन्देश दिन खोजिएको छ, जसमा चाहिँ पूर्व तयारीदेखि फर्किसकेपछि उहाँहरूले त सिप पनि ल्याउनु भएको हुन्छ र पुँजी पनि ल्याएको हुन्छ, त्यसलाई चाहिँ कसरी व्यवस्थापन गर्ने र समाजमा हामी कसरी अझ राम्रोसँग स्थापना हुन्छ भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ यो वैदेशिक रोजगार सम्बन्धी सुरक्षित वैदेशिक रोजगार सम्बन्धी स्रोत सामग्री तयारी गरिएको छ र यसले चाहिँ त्यो कुरालाई चाहिँ अझ सहजता गर्नेछ र सान्दर्भिकता रहनेछ भन्ने चाहिँ हामीले यो टट ट्रेनिङबाट सिकाउन सक्छौँ। र उहाँहरूसँग सिप छ, ज्ञान पनि छ, तर धारणामा चाहिँ कसरी परिवर्तन ल्याउने भन्ने कुरा अझ यसले विशेष सहयोग गर्नेछ भन्ने हामी आशा।
यहाँबाट चाहिँ नेपाली कामदारहरू जो चाहिँ वैदेशिक रोजगारमा गएर फँसेका छन्, अल्पत्र परेका छन्, कुनै कारणवश अब भनेको काम पाइएन, भनेको तलब पाइएन, नेपाल फर्किनुपर्ने स्थिति छ भने तिनीहरूलाई चाहिँ नेपाल कसरी फर्काउने त्यसको व्यवस्थापन गर्दछौँ हामी यहाँबाट। र सँगसँगै हक हित सम्बन्धी कामहरू पनि गरिन्छ, जस्तै आर्थिक सहायता दिने काम, अङ्गभङ्गको केसमा केस हेरेर, मृत्युको केसमा 1.5 लाख रुपियाँ आर्थिक सहायता, त्यो कामहरू पनि गर्दै गर्दछ।
So Maurizio, in terms of a number of migrants leave Nepal at a very young age, and maybe they're abused, maybe their contract isn't implemented. They come back here, they don't have a lot of skills. So how does IOM or the NGOs that you're working with help with that kind of thing?
You have, Mike, drawn up really a very good picture of the old cycle of migration. Migration is obviously pre-departure, departure, the experience of living abroad, and very often return. Each of these segments presents challenges, could present traps, but also opportunities. You mentioned the youngster that have such a high hopes about their chances of making good for themselves or for their families. Some of them, unfortunately, have not enough of a sense of what it actually takes and needs it to make good. Especially the youngster, and especially in Nepal, but not only in Nepal, many people are expelled from the community because of needs. Basic needs are not met. Other children, as young as, in their teen, but even younger, are kind of lent to families, and sometimes they're abandoned and gone astray. They are exploited and they have been trafficked. Again, this is a global phenomenon, but this is particularly painful. And other children see their future abroad, but they don't know that there is not simply a walk on roses, that there are immense challenges outside there, so they need to get equipped. What we believe and what the message that we would like to put across is really get smart. And first of all, think twice. And if you decide that that's actually the life that you want to go for, get equipped. Get all the tools that you need to make good and not to fall prey of. There's so many profiteers, exploiters, traffickers, all the bad guys actually that live outside, and they're actually waiting for a youngster to make to set the wrong foot down, to basically jump on them and exploit them. So, and then the issue of returning, how to make sure that the immigration experience that is never permanent for many people is one way, but it's also a return ticket. Is actually a return with something valuable in your hands, not only with a handful of change that you feel you have lost your youth, your time, your resources. You have, again, to make the best of the time you spend abroad. You are never alone. The communities that are actually gelling up around the individuals, the diaspora, so-called diaspora, are an important element, the platform of aggregation. And coming back, you need to be assisted, because the return journey sometimes is even as hard, if not more hard, than the way out. So we need to prepare the ground, the nurturing ground for the youngster actually to come back and make harness all the possible gains of the immigration experience.
Who are some of your local partners? Who are some of the NGOs that IOM is working with in Nepal?
Well, there are so many that would be difficult to mention them name by name, because I would certainly forget a few.
Just a few.
Yes, well, we work with Pukari, we work with PNCC, we work with ABC, we work in different realms, especially the support of irregular migrants who are coming back to Nepal and need for reintegration assistance, victims of trafficking that are also assisted, but most importantly also, as I mentioned, the way out, the preparation of the migration path, in providing and delivering information and counseling to would-be migrants. We work also, obviously, with many national institutions in the administration, in the government, but the civil society for me is that right now is a brewing and sparkling cultivation ground that is producing so much potentially good activities and resources to empower and to make sure that migrants themselves get on the driver's seat. And many of these NGOs that I mentioned are actually made of migrants themselves, the returning migrants, so that no one better than them actually can understand what it means actually having gone through and what it needs to be built in order to safeguard the entirety and the safety of migrants. So I think they are the most welcome new entries and not necessarily new entries, because many of them, some of them, Mighty Nepal, for instance, to mention, on the country trafficking, have been working on these issues for the last 20, 25 years. I have a great respect, and we are learning an immense amount of experience and expertise from their work. So they are, again, an international organization should actually lean towards local partners with an humble and modest outlook, as we are often the one that are absorbing so much from the local context. And then we are able to transpose it again elsewhere, because Nepal is also a laboratory. Through building bridges between borders and frontiers and continents, I think we bring a lot of a good practice that the NGOs and SCOs in Nepal have developed to other countries.
And finally, what is a message that you'd like to leave our viewing audience about migration?
I would have a few. The one I've already mentioned, to get smart. Don't make yourself being duped or swindled by those who promise you a rose garden.
Right.
It never exists.
Right.
Especially to the youngster. You have to really to take care of yourself and listen to your peers. And to the society as a whole, this is an issue so complex and complicated that to be dealt with and handled by a single institution. So one key message is really partnership. We really need to work together. The problem with migration has been so cross-cutting. Invest and touch upon economics, public order, foreign affairs, education, culture, agriculture, livelihood. So it's difficult to embrace it in one whole. But there are ways to do that. So we have to really working together in the institution, and the time is now. The third message is really it's like, the light of a star. The one we see has left millions of light years ago. So we cannot wait for things actually to get worse. We got really to act together now to make sure that the migrants of tomorrow will actually have a better life and a better go than the people that are living in Nepal today. We owe that to the children of Nepal, the whole community. This is what we should be working at.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Dhanyavad.